Hey guys, welcome back. If you missed class today, Wednesday, December 3rd, or tomorrow, December 4th, we are in fact having the last quiz of the year of 2025, not the school year, on 12/5, December 5th. And the unit exam is on 12/12. And for our top grade students, they will earn an invite to our exclusive science Christmas party on December 19th. So let's go ahead and get started. This is Unit 3, Quiz 2 Study Guide, mainly focused on cells, cell organelles, and body organization. I have it zoomed in as much as I can right now, so let's go and look at chloroplast. So the instruction here, obviously, shade, color, or draw an arrow to each organelle if it appears in a plant, an animal, or both. So we need to identify the organelles visually. And this is something that comes up a lot on our state test, on our county testing. So let's start with chloroplast since it's at the top and first alphabetically. What do we know about chloroplast? If you're looking back at your notes, let me grab them, from before Thanksgiving, what do we know about chloroplast? Well, we know it's at the bottom, so I got to move it up. We know that chloroplast is only in a plant cell, right? Only in a plant cell. So the first thing we can do is eliminate the fact we even need to find it in an animal cell. The second thing, we look at the picture. It looks like some stacked double nickels to me. It usually looks like this circle with these little stacks in it. Green, oval membrane covered. So let's look back here and see if we can identify it. So first, we know not an animal. Don't even worry about that. So now we're looking for the shape that is oval and has those little stacked nickels in it. Right there. It's hard to see, I know, but what we don't want to confuse that shape, something like this, we don't want to confuse that with the mitochondria. Let's just hop over here and we'll do the mitochondria. What do we know about the mitochondria? From our notes, it is in both plants and animals. So we got to find it both places. And it looks like this bean with squiggly lines in it. So we know it's in plants and animals. And we're looking for something that's usually going to look like this. It has that double membrane inside. It gives it a lot of surface area. So yeah, like we can see one right there. We can see one right there. We can see one right there. But those two shapes are very similar and easy to confuse, and we want to make sure we don't confuse them. I'm going to try to autofocus this. Hopefully that makes the words a little clearer. So we don't want to confuse this chloroplast and this mitochondria. Same overall shape. They both look like a bean, but what's in them tends to look different. Also, something neat to note, you notice this cell has 2 mitochondria, while the plant cell only has 1. Cells that require more energy, such as muscle cells or brain cells, will tend to have more mitochondria. The reason is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It produces the energy. So if you use a lot of energy, like a muscle cell or a brain cell, you need more mitochondria. A plant cell is not going to have nearly as many because it has chloroplast that also produce energy, right? So it has 2 ways of getting that energy. Okay, let's look at cytoplasm. What do we know about cytoplasm? Back to our notes. It is in both plants and animals, absolutely. Surrounds the organelles, gel fluid surrounding the organelles. So where is the cytoplasm? And what we don't want to confuse, gel that surrounds organelles, we don't want to think for a second that it's this. It's not. This we'll talk about it in a few minutes, is not the cytoplasm. Everything else, like all of this area that is not a cell organelle, is full of cytoplasm. It is kind of like if you think about a swimming pool that has a bunch of little floaties all over the top, it's the water. If you think about a restaurant, it's all the air inside the restaurant. It is what everything else exists in. So the cytoplasm is everything that the other stuff is floating around in. You all may be too young to experience fruit salad, but it's that weird jelly bundt cake shaped salad that has fruit everywhere in it. That's kind of like the cytoplasm, the jello that all the fruit's floating around in. It's kind of like the cytoplasm. So, nuclei or nucleus. What is that? So we've talked about this one. This one's pretty easy for everybody. It's in both. All plant and animal cells have to have a nucleus. Bacteria, however, do not have a nucleus. We'll get to that later. It is the control center of the cell. It has the DNA in it. It controls everything that goes on. In some of your cell analogy projects that you chose restaurants, it's the chef. It controls everything that goes on. And it usually will get represented as a big circle, and it might be a circle with a smaller circle in it, and there's a reason for that. You don't have to know it. You'll learn that in high school. But so here, we're going to say the big thing, and you see how that has like the smaller circle in it? The big circle with the smaller circle, nucleus, right? So our nucleus is going to be in both right there. Okay. DNA. So where's the DNA? Do both of these cells have DNA? Absolutely. Where is the DNA? We just talked about it. Where's the DNA? Yeah, the DNA is that little dark circle inside the nucleus. That is where the DNA is at, right? DNA is this cool double helix. We'll talk about this later this year. But it is inside of that nucleus. So that is where the DNA is housed. It is the coding for everything that happens. Okay. So over here, let's look at vacuoles. What do we know about vacuoles? Back to the notes. What do we know about vacuoles? They're in animals. Oh, sorry, that's not factual. They're in both. I was looking at lysosome. They're in both. They are the storage for water. Plants have one large one, usually called a central vacuole, and animals have a bunch of small ones. So yeah, you see it. I said don't get this confused. Vacuole. Then you have a bunch of small vacuoles over here for the animal. So a central vacuole, and then all these small. And why might animals have a bunch of small ones and plants a big one? I talked about it in the notes video for this. Plants can't move. Plants need to store a lot of water in case there's a drought. Animals, they can go find the water. That's the thing they can do. Okay, so the cell membrane. What do we know about the cell membrane? It's found in both. It regulates what's coming in and out of the cell. So we need to think about where it would be located. We know that plants have a cell wall. Is it on the inside or outside of the cell wall? So hopefully when you drew your cell model, you noted that the membrane is inside the cell wall. So if you have cell wall, just pretend that's pretty. So if we have our cell wall, our membrane is going to sit inside of the cell wall. Right? Yeah. Well, that's going to make this one real easy, huh? So cell wall only in plants. So we can go ahead and mark animals off. Support and protection, and like we just said, it is the outermost. It is the outermost. Provides support and protection, and that is all there is to that. There is one that I left off here, not purposefully, but accidentally. It is called a lysosome. Let's pop up here. You're going to see it later. I know it's in here. I got sidetracked, I guess. I'm not sure. So lysosome exists only in animals. Some researchers believe it's in plants, about 5%. So it looks something like this. And it's usually red, so if we had a pen, we'd shade it red. But it's the trash man. It goes around and gets rid of everything. But we'll talk about it in a minute. It didn't get left off the whole thing. It's just not right here. Okay, sorry. Got the pages switched. Arrange. So we're moving on to a different thing. Right now we're going to be like levels of organization. We've done this a lot. I made up a song about it. I hope y'all remember it. Correct order from simplest to most complex, levels of organization. So our word bank's here. What is the least complex? Simplest thing, right? What is the basic unit of life? Cell. Absolutely. So cell, basic unit of life. What do cells make? Two or more cells come together to perform a specific function. Two or more cells make a tissue. Yeah. What happens when two or more tissues come together to perform a specific function? You get an organ system, an organ, or an organism. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to have anything but an organ. So if I have two or more organs, I hope you remember this pattern, two or more organs working together to carry out a specific function, I have an organ system. And either just knowing it or process of elimination, organism. Two or more organ systems coming together, organisms are able to carry out all of the functions of life. So we'll talk about that in a second. Organisms can carry out all of the functions of life, and humans, higher order primates, that kind of thing, animals, dogs, cats. This cell to organism is always true. So let's just put the letters under there. We've already talked about them. The basic cell, so a basic cell, the basic structure, yeah, basic unit. So tissues, we said it a second ago, a group of similar cells. Organ, yeah, a group of similar tissues. Organ system, yeah. I mean, this is pretty repetitive, right? And E, complete living thing made up of many systems working together. So, pretty straightforward. You all did really well on the last test with that, so like 90-something%. Cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organs make organ systems make organisms. A prokaryote and a eukaryote. We'll talk about them much more next week when we talk about the kingdoms. We've talked about them a little bit during warm-up. You identified very quickly the main thing that was different, and what was that? Yeah, nucleoid region. Pro means no. It actually doesn't, just remember this. No nucleus. Pro means no. No nucleus. You are made of eukaryotic cells. So you are made up of eukaryotic cells. Your cells have a nucleus. Prokaryotes, no nucleus. What is the main difference? Whoop, my lights went off. Hang on one second. That's always fun. So what's the main difference? The main difference, you Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. Sorry, I wrote that completely horribly. So just, yeah. Eukaryotic equals nucleus. Excuse me. So eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. Pro means no, no nucleus. Which of these is more complex? Just by looking at them, I mean, there's a tail on one, there's like flagellum, there's these pili on the side. This looks complex. And in a certain sense, it is complex. This single bacteria can carry out all of the functions of life. This single bacteria, prokaryote, is an organism. But which is more complex, really? Eukaryotic cells carry a much higher level of complexity, to the point that even the mitochondria has its own different DNA. That's kind of weird, but it does. So which is more complex? The one with a nucleus. Eukaryotic cells, much more complex. Eukaryotic cells have a nucleus. So if you see, and oddly, this is wild, some eukaryotic cells can have a flagellum. Not going to go into a lot of detail, but some do. But if you see a nucleus, you know for a fact it is eukaryotic. All right. So let's talk about single-celled, like the bacteria, and multicellular organisms like you. So how many cells, I swear, if you get this wrong, I'm going to cry. How many cells are in a single cellular organism, sometimes called unicellular or unicelled? Uni, like unicycle, means one, right? So how many organisms are in a single-celled organism, please? Yes, one. Uni means one, single, obviously one. So let's mark that out of our word bank. Multicellular organisms are made of, yes, many, more than one, a lot, typically in multicelled organisms. Types of cells are, okay, so they played some announcements. I'm going to try to pause this before they do the next bus. Types of cells. All cells in a single-celled organism they're all simple. They have to be like that bacteria. They can't do too much. So in a multicellular organism, plants, animals, all cells have to become specialized. For specific jobs. Each cell needs to be able to do something different. They can't all do the same thing. Okay? Example, unicellular organism. I already said this on accident. Actually, you already know it. Bacteria are a good example of a unicellular organism. Multicellular organism, a good example? Humans. Life functions. One cell carries out all. That one. Okay. So different cells work together to perform complex life processes. So unicellular, single-celled organism, they have to do everything themselves. Bacteria, super, super basic. Multi-celled organisms, humans, think about every cell in your body. Skin, bone, muscle, yeah. All of those different cells do different things. Nerve cells do not do the same thing bone cells do. They are all specialized to do a single job. Those cells cannot carry on life by themselves. Okay. Compare and contrast a plant and an animal cell. So first thing, what do we know? First thing, Plant cells have walls. Animal cell, no wall. Boom. Wall, no wall. Large vacuole. Small vacuoles. Right? Right here, lysosomes. We don't have that over here. What else do we know? Where are they at? Oh, I don't have the great little double nickel. We got our chloroplasts. We have our chloroplast. Very similar things, plant and animal cells, very similar. Main difference, cell walls, chloroplast, lysosome. So they both are part of larger organisms. They both have a nucleus because they are eukaryotic. But the main difference, cell wall, chloroplast, lysosome. Sorry about that. I had a visitor, and now I'm not sure where I was at. So yeah, again, main thing to know. I mean, if you saw something that was like, I don't know, wall, nucleus, mitochondria, and it said organism 1 has a cell wall, has a nucleus, has a mitochondria. Cell 2 does not have a wall, it has a nucleus, it has a mitochondria. And it said, which one is a plant cell? You would say, oh, well, this one has a cell wall, so it has to be the plant cell, right? Or if it said, which one is not a plant cell? Well, this one doesn't have a cell wall. And we know by definition a plant has to have a cell wall. So, boom. Did I get my papers out of order? Oh, I am so silly. I forgot I printed on the back, guys. Please forgive me. I'm old. So let's turn these over. I thought that is not nearly enough. So matching each organelle. Oh, if I were smart, I would have noticed it didn't go A to B. I'm not re-recording this. Just bear with me being old. Controls the functions and activity. Which, use your notes if you need to. Which of these controls cell functions and activities? What is in charge? What is the control center? In your restaurant, in your cruise ship, what was in charge? The nucleus. I gotta put papers under here. It's hard to write on this. Sorry, guys. The nucleus contains the DNA. It's in charge. It's the control center. What captures sunlight to make food? Well, we know this one is only in plants, right? So which one's only in plants? We know it's the cell wall and the chloroplast. Which one of those captures sunlight? Yeah. Oops. L-O-R-O-P-L-A-S-T, chloroplast. So the chloroplast captures the sunlight, and it makes sugars from that. And it is only in plants. Breaks down waste and worn out parts. Do you remember? Yeah. The one I didn't have on the other side of this paper. The lysosome. And it is only in animal cells. Jelly-like substance holding organelles. This thing that all of them just float in. Cytoplasm. Provides structure and support. What provides structure and support? Cell membrane, cell wall, mitochondria, vacuole. Yeah. Structure, support, wall. Structure, support, wall. Cell wall. And it is where? Only in plants. Stores water, nutrients, and waste. Well, which one of these stores water, nutrients, and waste? Oops. Okay, I hope that was the last bus. So, what stores the water? Remember, we have one big central one in a plant. Vacuole. Stores water, nutrients, and waste. Releases energy from food. This is a kind of odd way to think about it, but this is how it works. So you take in food, you digest food, you have energy. So this structure works similarly. It releases, think about it this way, releases the energy that's stored in food. Think about our chemistry, we're releasing it, we're putting the energy out. What is the powerhouse of the cell? What would take the energy? The mitochondria. I'm not going to write the whole thing. The mitochondria. You're going to make me write it fun. Chondrion, mitochondrion. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. And then what controls what comes in and out? We had a warm up about this. What would happen if it failed? It's the only one left. So, need a better ink pen. The cell membrane. The cell membrane is in charge of letting things into and out of the cell. So, pretty straightforward. They're all on your notes. Please study those notes also. Here are three similar looking organelles. The reason I chose them is they are similar and they're not the nucleus. The nucleus is usually, should always be, the largest one in the center, while these three will be outside the nucleus, floating around in the cytoplasm. And you need to be able to identify them by this picture. So look, it's a bean. It has that weird double squiggly inside. What is it? Yeah, it's the mitochondria. Chondrion, mitochondria. Okay. Yeah, that's how I remember to spell it. Leave me alone. So which one do I always say looks like a bunch of double nickels? See, it's nickels. It's just a bunch of nickels stacked on top of each other. It's also oval, which gets it easy to confuse with the mitochondrion, but it has those little nickels, right? It's only in plants. Chloroplast. So if you ever see a circle with all those little nickel-looking things in it, think to yourself quickly, chloroplast, especially if it's colored and it's green. Here, this is the funny looking one, right? I've showed it to you cut in half. It can also be represented this way. Lysosome, full of digestive enzymes, goes around. That was unexpected. Let's try this again. It's full of digestive enzymes. It goes around, it gets rid of waste. I call it the garbage man, the trash man. It's the one that takes care of the waste. It gets rid of things. Okay. A little bit harder here, guys. We've talked about 5 organ systems. Your body poster project that's due on 12/9, Tuesday, 12/9, should have all 5 of these, right? So what are they? What are the organ systems that we've talked about? Let's start with the circulatory system. Circulatory system. What does it do? Well, we'll get to that. What are the main organs in the circulatory system? The heart is a big one. It is the pumper. It's the one that pushes everything out. Veins. Oops. Veins. They carry blood around the body, veins and arteries. We also have a tissue that we want to think about. That tissue is blood, and that's a weird thing to think because we usually think blood is a cell, blood tissues, more cells. So let's just think about blood. Okay. Primary function. Take nutrient to body and remove waste from body. So in a cell, the lysosome removes the waste. In the body as a whole, that waste is picked up by the circulatory system and taken to either be respirated out through the respiratory system, breathing, or to be urinated out through the urinary system, going pee-pee, if you will. But that is how it gets away from the cell as a whole. What is our next organ system? Let's go with muscular system. And this is confusing sometimes because the heart's a muscle, right? We've said that. But the heart is not part of the muscular system. When we're talking about the muscular system, we're talking about skeletal muscle. That's all. Just the skeletal muscle, the muscle that moves you around. Not the smooth muscle in your intestines, not the cardiac muscle in your heart, only skeletal muscle. So what's the main function? Move bones. Phew, I'm having a hard day spelling. Move bones to allow movement. And since we're already talking about the skeletal system, let's just do it next. Skeletal system. I'll have a clean version of this I'll type up because, as you know, my handwriting is not great. What are the main organs? We could name each individual bone: femurs, ribs, skull, pelvis, tibia, fibula, humerus, whatever. We could name them. Let's just say bones, okay? And if you need an example, skull and femur are always two good ones. Most everybody will know what you're talking about because the skull is pretty obvious. The femur is the longest bone in the body. Primary function: support and protection. So the skeletal system, you don't always think about it as being protective. It also produces red blood cells. Let's put that in there. Or it makes blood cells. Okay, we don't always think about that. But like the ribs protect the internal organs. The skull protects the brain. The pelvis, one of the very few bones that is differentiated by sex, protects reproductive organs, uterus, all of that. So when we really talk about support and protection, support so you can stand upright, like remember I showed you the Harry Potter video where he didn't have an arm, it just flopped around. Without bones, you'd just be a big pile of mush. Protection keeps all of that important stuff, protected from impacts, and also makes red blood cells, which is very important. Red blood cells, or makes blood cells. Red blood cells last about 120 days, so if you couldn't make new ones, that'd be tough. Let's see, the next one, nervous system. What are the main organs here? So we talk about the main organs of the nervous system: the brain, spinal cord, and we can call them peripheral nerves. They're the nerves that come off of. So we have a central nervous system, brain, spinal cord, all the way down. And we have that peripheral nervous system. So I'm just going to put P and S, peripheral nervous system. All of the other nerves that go out, that lets you feel, touch, sensation, we're just going to say that are the main organs. Primary function. Whew. We talked about nerves all day one day. 3 types of nerves. Their primary function, very diverse. So reflexes, that involuntary reflex. You touch something hot, ow, you move your hand away. Involuntary. The things that are atomic. I can't even get the word out, guys. I'm tired. The things that happen automatically, like your heart beating. respiration, those things that require the nerve, but your brain, your animal brain, just doing that brain stem just tells the heart to beat. So primary function, it depends on which kind we're talking about, but reflex, movement, or telling muscles to move. So let's just say sending messages, sending impulses for movement. And autonomic, I just cannot get that out today. And, basic life function, the things that happen automatically. Autonomic, that is not right. Anonomic, no, I'll give up. And the last one, this one, it's a little confusing. I had somebody ask about it today. Integumentary. Integumentary system. Again, if you are watching this and you are not in my class or at my school, disregard. Guys, you all need to get to the bus. The buses are waiting for you. Anyway, integumentary system, main organs, obviously the skin, right? And then what's next? Did you know hair? Fingernails? Yeah, pores? All of that is part of the integumentary system. So it's not just skin. We say skin because when you think skin, right, you think hair, you think all that. The integumentary system is way more complex. Like the sweat glands are technically going to be included in part of another system we'll talk about after Christmas, but they're embedded in the integumentary system. So primary function, it kind of, let's pull this back. This kind of is like the cell membrane, right? It's protection, but not protection like the skeletal system. This is protection from germs mainly. Also, it regulates temp. So yeah, when you get like goosebumps or goose pimples, whatever you call them, that's your body trying to pull that skin tight. When you're sweating through the pores, that's your body trying to cool itself down. It helps regulate temp through the integumentary system. So protection from germs, bacteria, it is the body's first line of protection. We'll talk about the immune system later, but it's really kind of embedded with the immune system too. I mean, they work together. So let's go back and look at a couple of lessons we did because they're very important. That's why we did them. If they weren't important, I wouldn't do them, right? So lesson review. We watched a video, and if I'm clever, I may plug it in right here. $38.17. Okay, so we watched a video of of skin cells. Again, sorry. This video now has so many interruptions, I'm considering just redoing the whole thing, which might not be a bad idea. Yeah. So we watched the video of skin cells reproducing, and what we saw different stages of what's called mitosis. So what did we notice? What did we say at the end? When these large cells split and we got two new cells, and I told you, yeah, they're a little bit smaller right now, but they will grow. Remember, that's how the skin filled the gap. So they grow. And what else happens when they grow? Everything in it starts to double. It's getting ready for mitosis again. The daughter cells, what do they share in common with the parent cell? What does mitosis produce? And we'll talk a lot more about mitosis. Get excited. What does it produce? Yeah, it produces two of the original cell. Two cells that are exactly like the parent cell. It makes two skin cells that are exactly the same. It's not going to make a skin cell and a muscle cell. It makes two cells that are exactly the same. So if you are trying to grow, like you have an injury and you need to repair that injury, you need to grow new cells. So one cell grows bigger, splits into two that grow bigger, so the cells will fill the gap, like it filled the gap on the guy that broke his poor foot. So down here, we watched that cool video. I thought it was cool. Disregard this. This is a note for me. Speaking of which, we watched the video of the red onion cells, and when they were put in salt water, they like shrank up, sort of. We noticed, we talked about how the cell wall didn't shrink. The cell wall, its job is to be supportive, to provide support, structure, and it's there. That's what it does. So what happened to the onion cells when they were put in salt water? A neat thing happened, right? Osmosis took place. Osmosis is the passing of water through a semi-permeable barrier. Well, we know that the cell membrane is semi-permeable, so the water left the cell into the salt water, right? In class, we talked about some percentages, but it left the cell. We saw it shrink. We saw what shrink? What did we see shrinking? The cell wall did not shrink, right? The cell wall is still there. So we saw cytoplasm shrink. So cytoplasm shrink. What else do you think shrank? Where's the water stored in a plant cell? Yeah, the vacuole shrank. The water came out of the cytoplasm and the vacuole, and we shrank down. Where did it go? How did it get out? I think I just told you. It left through the cell membrane, right? That's what lets things out. So it had to pass through the cell membrane to get out. Yeah, so it kind of makes sense, right? So the cell wall is providing that structure. The cell wall is not moving. Cell wall is strong. It's in place, support and structure. All of the water is leaving the cytoplasm and the vacuole through the cell membrane, and technically through the cell wall, but through the cell membrane. Did the cell die? No, like obviously the cell didn't die, because when we put it back in plain water, we saw an increase in cytoplasm and an increase in the vacuole size. It spread back out, more like this one. It spread back out and filled up the cell wall. So if it didn't die, we can assume that the other parts of that cell were still working. The mitochondria were working. The nucleus with the DNA did not die. It was not damaged, so it was still working, sending out the controls. The vacuole, we assume it refilled with water. It was still working. Red onion cells don't have chloroplast, to my knowledge, so that probably wasn't working. And the mitochondria was obviously still working, giving energy to the nucleus to send out the signals to tell the cell what to do, even though it was losing water. So it's a really cool thing to watch, and I'll try to plug the video in here. Yeah, and guys, that's pretty much it. Trying to think if there's anything else that you really need to know. Know the functions of the cell organelles. Make sure you know what they do. Be able to identify eukaryote and prokaryote, or be sure you know that you are made of eukaryote cells, which have a nucleus. Prokaryotes, pro means no, no nucleus. Make sure you know that tissues make or cells make tissues, tissues make organs, organ systems, organisms. Um, yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Multicellular versus singular cellular organisms. Multicellular, very complex. Cells are specialized. Um, yeah, no, that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. Hopefully trim it down. I'll get a typed up set of for the study guide, so you don't have to try to read my handwriting. I'll post it for tomorrow, and we will go over this in class, guys. This is going to be an easy quiz. I expect a lot of 100s, and I want us being Mr. Gardner's class, Mr. G, getting the most people invited to that Christmas party.